I know I made a comment about Boris Johnson.
Boris Johnson is your celebrity crush?
What?
Really?
Yeah, it's on my
Why?
Hinge profile as well.
Which was a total joke. And there's a lot of like political hate out there, which I didn't really think too much about, but people have really, really angry political views. And so I got a lot of trolling for that.
What inspired you to sign up for Love Island? I mean, did you apply or were you recruited?
So I had a message in my Instagram inbox saying, asking if I'd ever considered applying to Love Island. And at the time, I'd just broken up with my boyfriend. And so I thought, you know what, why not? Like, this will be a bit of a laugh. I don't think anything will come of it, but why not? And so I sent in an application, let the researching the researching person who'd emailed me know. And then I know 6 or 7 interviews later, I ended up being flown out to Mallorca to be on the show.
Wow. And so when you got that DM, had the series already launched, or was it before they'd even started airing that series?
So it was way before they started airing the series. I think it was the January before. So it was well in advance.
And how long had you been with your ex at the time when you just broken up? Or
so I think it had been like a year.
Yeah,
a year-long relationship, and then the breakup sort of came out of nowhere, and I was in that phase where I was saying yes to everything, and Love Island was one of the things I said yes to.
It's like the ultimate revenge haircut. You know how everyone, when they go through a breakup, gets a haircut, and yours was just like, no, I'm going to go on Love Island.
Exactly. That's the best way to get back at your ex. Go on to Love Island.
And so had you ever considered reality TV before that, or TV at all?
Oh no, not at all. Definitely not reality TV. I don't think what have I got myself into? But I mean, I quickly reassured them that wasn't going to be the case. Like, it was just going to be fun, doing something different, and they quickly warmed to the idea.
Amazing. So did you end up watching any episodes before you went on the show?
Yeah, I did. I watched 2 weeks before I went on, every day. So I knew what was happening. I knew how.
You know all the lingo.
Exactly. Well, I don't think I quite got the lingo down. I think there's a clip of me from the show where I'm like talking to some of the other contestants and asking them like about some words that are commonly used on Love Island, and me having absolutely no clue. It's very embarrassing, but you know.
And so what was the process of being cast like? So you mentioned you had quite a few interviews after you applied?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so first sort of you send in a video of yourself, and you fill out a few questions, and then I think one of the steps soon after is a psych assessment. So they make sure that you're mentally well and you can cope with all the pressure that being on the show would bring, and then you have a few medical checkups. You have I think you have another meeting with some of the other sort of casting producers, and then you get invited to the studio and meet with like the top 3 execs. That was very scary, sitting in front of 3 of them firing questions at me, and then eventually you get a phone call 2 days before, and you're told, okay, we're flying you out to Mallorca. So it's all very uncertain until that phone call happens, really.
Yeah, throughout that process, were you thinking this has the potential to change my life, or you were like, this is just a bit of fun? It's quite a long time to consider what this is going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't really think about it too much. I sort of went in blind. I knew what I wanted to do with my life before I went onto the show. It wasn't like, I didn't really have a career or like didn't know what to do. I had a plan, and this was me going off plan. But I mean, now I'm back on to what I'm doing with more. But yeah, I had low expectations. I knew that I was going to be dropped in at the end because I was still in the UK while the current season was going. And I didn't actually know if I was going to go on to the show because it was getting sooner and sooner towards the end. and I hadn't got a phone call yet. So I had low expectations.
Yeah, wow. And before all of this, you were a medical student. What did your day-to-day look like for you back then?
So sort of going into hospitals, going on placements, doing learning, afterwards, a lot of studying, a lot of time spent in hospitals, and then hanging out with friends on the weekend.
Did you have to tell, were you allowed to be open with your friends and family? And well, obviously your parents knew, but were you allowed to be open with friends, family and colleagues and your peers about what was about to happen, or did you have to keep it hush?
I didn't tell any of my colleagues, or I told two of my friends who were going to be looking after my Instagram account. I told my parents, and I did speak to the medical school before I went on to the TV show to check that it was okay that I could go on.
How did they react?
They were sort of surprised. They were definitely surprised. They said their main concern was my security and making sure that, after the show, there weren't people that would come to the medical school and stalk me or have inappropriate contact with me. I think that was their main concern. But I reassured them that I would do my best to make sure that didn't happen. Yeah,
I imagine that was also quite concerning for you to hear as well. Did you start worrying about what it could be like after the show?
So I mean, I was very prepared because we had a psych interview early on, and they discussed it with us, all the positives and negatives and how I'd be able to deal with it. And I felt like I could manage it well. I wasn't too worried about that happening. I feel like I was dropped in at the end, and so I knew that I wasn't gonna, what's that film where is it what's the film in Notting Hill where he opens the door and there are loads of paparazzi outside? Yes. I knew that wouldn't happen. So that would be my worst nightmare. So I feel like I got off easy.
And at that point, excuse my lack of medical knowledge, did you know what your specialism was going to be in medicine? Had you decided on what career you were going to, what path you were going to follow as your specialism?
Well, I think I've always been pretty keen on sports and exercise medicine or orthopedic surgery, because I definitely want sports to be at the focus. I'm a keen runner. I'm really prioritise my health, and that's something that's an area of medicine that I found really interesting. But I mean, I'm still uncertain, and it's quite good that the training program is so long, because it allows you to experience all the different specialities and then finally come to a decision. And I could still change my mind. That's my goal at the minute, but who knows?
Brilliant. And sorry, I'm just writing down questions. I've got my questions prepared and I've got the ones I'm writing down, so it's just a lot of screens to look at. You knew that you were going to go on in the end, so did you have to take time off work, like a certain amount of period, or did you know that, so you were dropped in on week 4, that I looked at this earlier and now I can't remember, either 36 or 42, I can't remember.
Yeah, but, I think it was I don't really remember, but I know that it was about 2 weeks before the final.
Yeah.
So I'd actually decided earlier on in about February that year, before I found out whether I was going on to Love Island or not, that I wanted to take some time off medical school. The pandemic had been one of the key factors in that, because I found it quite tough managing studying with also helping out during COVID. Being on the front line was quite overwhelming, like working in ICU. And I felt like I didn't really have time to learn as well as help out. And I just wanted a little break from it all. And so I took a break, and a couple months later, I ended up on the show. So it all worked out for the best. And
how did you feel to be a bombshell? Did you kind of initially hope that you'd be in from the beginning, or were you just quite happy that you were going in as a kind of penultimate week's bombshell?
Obviously, you have more choice if you're there at the beginning, and you can form better relationships with not only, you know, the boys on the show, but also the other girls. And being the last girl in there was quite scary because everyone had formed their friendships, you know, everyone had formed their relationships. It was quite hard to sort of come in the middle of anything. And I'm not the kind of person that likes confrontation. And so I found it really difficult to, you know, try to talk to other boys who already were in couples. So I think it would have been better if I'd been there at the start. I would have found that easier. But also, I would rather have been a bombshell than being in Castle Moor, because that's a lot difficult, more difficult to get in to the house.
And did you were you able to watch the show as it was happening while you were preparing to go on it, or did you go in completely blind about who was with who? Or
no, we got to watch the show. So we have a chaperone. When you're flown out there, you stay in a villa with a chaperone. Because of COVID, we were isolated for 2 weeks. And so I think it was the week before the show started, we'd watch the episode every day, my chaperone and I together. So I knew what was going on.
Yeah, amazing. And so what was it like meeting the other islanders? You've already mentioned that obviously there was a bit more confrontation, a bit of I suppose tension there, but how did you enjoy your time on the show?
It was totally surreal. Like, you watch the show and you think you know someone, you think you know their entire personality, everything about them, and you get on, you like onto the show, you meet them in real life, and they are totally different. And because what a lot of people don't realize is that on the show you see 1 second of their like entire day, and so it's a very small piece of like their personality that you gain as a viewer. Whereas when you get to know them in real life, they're actually lovely. And I know there are a few Love Island contestants when I was on, I was a bit worried about meeting, or like a bit worried about getting involved with their couple. But actually they were really lovely and kind on the show.
Would you feel comfortable saying who they were, or like who changed your expectations the most, I suppose?
Well, I think there are like a couple arguments with a few of the islanders that were on the show. Like, I think, you know, anyone that got into an argument on the show, they would, you'd be a bit worried about meeting because you wouldn't want to get involved in that. But actually you get onto the show and they are lovely.
On that same vein though, you obviously went on the show with preconceived notions about what someone would be like, and then they changed it. Did that make you worried about how you would come across as well, if people were only getting to see a small snippet of what you could bring?
See, I didn't think about that before I went on to the show, funny enough. But I did come off the show thinking that, like, I felt that people had an opinion about me after I came off the show, and a lot of people who were trolling, they didn't really know me. And so, well, they didn't know me at all. And they were saying a lot of things that just weren't true. And so and it's all how it's edited on the show. And it can be edited in a really good way. It can also be edited in a negative way, but obviously it's edited in a way that is best for the viewer, for like viewer entertainment. And so I think people, when they watch reality TV, they have to bear that in mind.
And so when you came off the show, did you watch your episodes back to see how you perceived? Or I know a lot of people who've been on reality TV shows were like, I'm never watching what I was on, I don't want to see it. But
I could never watch myself on that show. No, it's too embarrassing. Like, I could never do it. I will never do it. And so when I've seen clips, like when they're, you know, through Instagram and stuff, I've seen little clips, but I can watch the episodes back.
And so how was it as well, having people trolling you kind of based on this thing that you hadn't seen in context, or you hadn't watched back, but also them knowing that that's not who you are as well? What was that like to deal with? Because obviously that's something that Love Island has had quite a lot of backlash against in the years before.
Yeah, I mean, trolling is something that, you know, you're warned about before you go onto the show. You know that there are people out there who create accounts, no photos, and just do it to harass others. And I was aware that was going to happen. But yeah, obviously trolling it's never nice. And so when I first came off the show, I I was sort of like a bit taken aback, because I came off, like before I went with the show, I literally had like 500 Instagram followers. And, you know, the only comments I'd get on my photos would be my best friends saying like, oh, you look really pretty, and like, you know, lifting each other up. And so it was quite shocking to come back with like, I don't know, 100 times, well, yeah, many more followers, and just have so many like mixed messages, and you try not to read the bad ones, but obviously you see them.
Yeah.
However, the Instagram tools are quite good, so I do block a few words. I know I made a comment about Boris Johnson, which was total joke, and there's a lot of like political hate out there, which I didn't really think too much about, but people have really, really angry political views. And so I got a lot of trolling for that. And so I've blocked certain words on my Instagram, so I don't see any of that now, which is great.
And I'm going to come back to that in a bit, just to talk about your friends managing your social accounts and their new precautions they put in place. But when you were on the show, what were your favourite moments?
I think one of my favourite moments on the show was there was a challenge where we had, I think it was like ice cream and like sweets and chocolate syrup, and we had to aim them at our partner, and they would have to catch them and like put them into another bowl, and you have to like fill up the bowl, and it was just really messy, really fun, and yeah, totally loved it. We all went wild. We were like covered in like chocolate and strawberry sauce, loads of different colors of ice cream, and sweets, and it was just, we smelled horrific. But it was just really good fun. I think that was the moment where I felt really bonded to the other islanders.
Amazing. And something that I've always been curious about, when you come in as a bombshell, do you get any tutorials about how to do the slow-mo walk? Because I'd just be terrified that I was going to trip up. Or do you just have to wing it and assume it's going to be a powerful walk that you're meant to do?
So you film half the walk the night before. So the walk of you coming up to the front door and opening it, that is actually done the day before, and it's filmed at like at different speeds, and I think the producers pick which looks the best. And yeah, when you walk in, that's not in slow motion, that's just, you know, normal pace, but that's very scary because you've seen the house on TV, but you don't actually know like what to expect. And when you see it on TV and then you're in it in real life, it's so strange. Like I remember walking into the garden and like looking around and thinking, God, this is so weird. And on the screen it looks huge, but actually in real life it wasn't that big, so you could literally see everyone. And like seeing faces that you'd seen on TV for the first time is also very strange.
Oh wow, that is good to know. So after that, you obviously didn't stay on the show for a super long time. How did it feel when you were booted off the show?
I mean, it was definitely the right time for me to go. I hadn't formed a relationship with my couple, and so I was the only one on the show. Like we were the only couple that wasn't a couple.
Yeah.
And it wasn't fair for us to stay on the show. And it was always going to be difficult, I think, being the last ones on, for us to have built a friendship, because it was done on votes with other people in the house. So it was always going to be challenging, but I think it was the right decision.
And have you made any like lifelong friends from your series?
I think I was on the show for like such a short period of time that it was hard to really form like a deep connection. Like I feel like I'd only known those girls and like boys on the show for 2 weeks, not even that. And like I currently, with my friends who I've known for like 15 years, I barely get to see them. So I think whenever I do see any of the other Love Island girls out, you know, or we go to the same events, that kind of thing. It's all very friendly, but I wouldn't say that I've made any super close friends.
Yeah, but when the show ended, when you got on that flight back home, how did you feel?
I don't quite remember how I felt. I felt like I was living in a bubble. Like, I think, you know, I had my Instagram and phone had exploded, so many messages, like phone calls from people who I hadn't spoken to in years, who had got my number from like saved on their phone from like ages ago, contacting me. And then so many other people on Instagram following me, sending me messages. It was so strange. And also getting to the airport in Mallorca, there were people who had recognized me, and that was really weird when people had their phones out filming me. That was really, really strange.
Wow, so I suppose, yeah, you kind of, before you even got back home, you knew that your life had changed, because it's not like a show where you film it seasons in advance, you've like months in advance, and you have to wait until it airs. You've got the immediate like ramifications of going, like being on the show.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the most challenging things with shows like Love Island, because you're sort of thrust straight into the limelight. You don't really have a moment to breathe, maybe like a day or two. But I think that's one of, like, I think you're prepared to feel that way, which is something that I was prepared for. So it was overwhelming, but it was controlled, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Manageable.
And so your friends had looked after your Instagram and socials during that time period. What did they kind of give you any insight into what the reaction to you had been? Did they give you the top lines? Were they on strict instructions not to pass on any negativity? How did you kind of approach the conversations with them before and after?
Well, I just sort of said, don't respond to trolls, because I don't think they would have done anyway. But I mean, I made that clear. I just said sort of no negativity, and, you know, create some good puns and maybe post them with my pictures, like, have fun with it, I trust you. And they did exactly that. I do, when I looked back at the Instagram stories that they had posted, I was very proud of them, like, that they had done all of that, and I was really grateful that they had. And I did see there was one post or one story that had said, we're aware that everyone has different opinions about Priya, but please, like, you know, be kind. And so that was quite upsetting to see, because they did tell me that they'd received a few messages that were really angry and trolling, and I think they took it more to heart than I would have done. Obviously, you know, when you care about someone, you feel their pain, like, even more than they would have done. So I think that's the feeling that they had, and they relayed that to me. They said they were really angry, but obviously they didn't react. Right.
And you also got loads of messages and support, and people, you know, that you knew before contacting you. Did you try to apply to everyone, or were you just like, no, that's not possible?
I feel like it was so busy afterwards, because I stayed in Mallorca for, I think, a couple more days to film After Sun live in Mallorca. And so we weren't given our phones until I think after that, actually, we were given our phones. And so when I did first get my phone, I was so busy with sort of interviews and filming and things like that I just had to put it down. And then I got to London, and literally a week after, I started medical school.
Yeah.
So I didn't have time to respond to everyone. I had so much going on. And so I think there are probably many messages that have not got responses.
And did the ex get in touch as well? The ex that led to the
No, I'm glad they didn't. Like, I think because by that point, by the time I'd come off the show, it had been almost a year. So I'd be very surprised if they did get in touch. And I'm very grateful that they didn't. Like, I wouldn't want to speak to them anyway.
And after all your parents' fears about you having sex on the show, how did they react? Did they watch it live, the show when you were on it?
Yeah,
were they proud of how
they
you came
watched
across?
Yeah, they watched it every day because it was my best friend. She was on my Instagram. So her parents and my parents, they'd all come together every evening and watch the show. And they were very happy with me. I think they questioned a few of the decisions that I made on the show, which is fair enough because so did I. But you know, they were very proud of me.
What kind of decisions did they question?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest decision was picking someone to send home. And I mean, in hindsight, I'm not really sure who I would have sent home, but I think I should have given it more thought.
And so you started medical school like a week after. How did your new colleagues and peers have anything to say about your Love Island stint?
Yeah, it was really strange. Like my friends at medical school sort of they didn't really know what to say, because I'd obviously taken the year out. So all my friends had were in a different year to me. And so I'd been put in a year with people who I hadn't really met before. And so it's quite funny because it was only after talking to them for like a few weeks when they eventually brought it up, which was quite nice because I think I felt like I was treated not differently. And in hospitals you wear masks, and so it's rare that people would be able to, you know, identify you. So that was also a positive. I was watching some surgery, and someone walked into the room, like another colleague who I'd never met before. But what people tend to do is they don't say anything in the moment. Then you get home and you open up your Instagram and you have loads of DMs saying, "Oh, I think I saw you in theatre today," and that is really strange. That's happened a few times in hospital.
And do you get patients as well ever been doing a double take or asking questions?
Yeah, but I don't obviously, as a medical student, you don't treat patients. You sort of just shadow and observe, and that is quite tricky because there's obviously a fine line between, you know, you've got to be professional. And so whenever a patient does, or someone's been in hospital who has been treated by, you know, a doctor that I've been in the same room with, I will just respond saying, "Oh, I didn't realize it was you. I hope I won't speak about any sort of hospital business, and I won't really respond to that, or I'll just not respond to their messages," because I think that's probably the best way to stay professional and like maintain that doctor-patient relationship.
And in those cases, are you quite glad for the masks as well, that a lot of the time patients don't recognize you because of it?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of positives to having a mask and not being recognized. But also I think, you know, being able to see someone's whole face is so important in terms of like, you know, opening up and like trusting each other. And so, yeah, it's something that I've debated with, but at the minute we're still wearing masks in hospitals. So that is good, I guess.
And so obviously your social media blew up overnight. Did you also then start getting, you know, people contacting you about ambassadorships, new work opportunities? What was that like?
Yeah, so it was quite good because while I was still out in Mallorca, I'd been contacted by my agent, my current agent now, and she manages other doctors, and she's so lovely, Wendy. And so she has sorted all of that out. I became part of her agency pretty early on, before I even came back to the UK. And so when I got back, she had sorted everything out, and it was great to not have to deal with all of that.
And were you excited about the kind of new platform that you've been given? Obviously, you're very passionate about healthcare and you're very passionate about running. And am I correct in that you ran a marathon as well for a charity? And was it brilliant to be able to do these things with more people taking an active interest in the causes that you were keen to support?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. The first thing that I did after coming off Love Island, first campaign I did, was with the NHS about the vaccine. And that was something I was really passionate about, having worked on the front line in ICU, seeing the effects of COVID and seeing how much difference the vaccine made to the number of people we had admitted. That was something that I was really keen, like a really keen campaign that I wanted to do. And that was the first thing I did do. And so I was it's amazing how much of a platform Love Island has given me to be able to do more things that I'm really passionate about. In terms of running, I've worked with, ASICS, the running trainers brand. I've worked with Strava, the app, which I've used for like years and years and absolutely love. And I've done work with Women's Running Magazine and things like that. And also with healthcare, like working with the NHS. And I feel like once I qualify as a doctor, I'll be able to do even more. So that's really exciting, how I can make a difference to the way that people, lead their lives. It's such an important responsibility, coming off Love Island, having that platform. You have so many people to influence. And so my one goal was to make sure I was positively influencing people, not with sort of like clothing brands and that kind of thing, but more with, living a healthier lifestyle, running, exercising, that kind of thing. And I hope I've done that. I've had lots of messages on my Instagram saying, with people telling me that they've taken up running after seeing me run, and that means so much to me. And that's when I know that I've really changed. I know how much running changed my life, and so it's always lovely to hear when people send me a message like that.
And how did running change your life, and when did you get into it?
So it was actually over the first lockdown, so that was 2020. We were taken off our medical school placements and sort of sent home, and I used running as an escape because I wasn't used to living at home. I've lived by myself for like 6 years now. And so going back home with family, I sort of wanted to just be outside, all being in a household together can be quite stressful. And so I use it as an escape. And I'd only ever run a half marathon, like one half marathon before lockdown. But over lockdown, I managed to run an ultra. So I did like a 50K run all in one go. And it was just to escape. I just kept on like increasing the distance and really loved it. And I think that's what got me into ultra running.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, so I really underestimated when when you ran a marathon. No, you ran an ultra marathon, multiple. Okay. So did you ever get people, we've talked about at work, people recognizing you and trolling, and we've talked about social media and the positive aspects of it as well, but do you ever get people just stopping you on the street or giving you their opinions on things you did on the show?
Any opinions that I've had, so I do have people that stop me on the street. They always say, "Oh, you look really familiar," and then I'll respond, "I've just got one of those faces," and then they'll walk away, and then they'll turn back, and then they'll say, "Oh my God, she was on Love Island." And that's what usually happens. That's what still happens now. And yeah, it's quite nice that I came off the show having only been on it for a brief amount of time, so that I'm not immediately recognized. I'm sort of one of those names that is like one of those faces that is kind of, it takes a second. And so I don't have like screaming fans like running up to me. Well, initially I did. Initially, when I first came off the show, that's happened. But currently now, it's more sort of like a delayed reaction and then messages in my Instagram inbox.
And so what, on the whole, is it like being back to reality?
I mean, so on the whole, it's great. I've always like loved medicine. And so I'm glad that Love Island didn't change my path. I don't think it would have done anyway. After 5 years at medical school, I don't think I would have changed my career. But I think, yeah, I've always wanted to do medicine. I've always said I'm just going to finish my degree. And so, yeah, it's great. I feel, I'm sorry, this is a really bad answer. But
No, it's not a bad answer at all.
I mean, I loved my life before I went onto the show. I loved every single part of it, apart from the fact that I didn't have a boyfriend. But currently, I've come off the show. I've got a boyfriend. You know, I've got my normal life, like doing medicine. Except now I've got a lot more things going on. I do TV things, work with brands that I'm really passionate about, and do so much more. So I mean, yeah, it's great.
And on that, I suppose, yeah, what was dating like after the show as well? Did you have in your bio, your dating profile bios, that you were on Love Island? Did you avoid mentioning it? Or did you have to factor that in?
So I actually didn't go back on a dating app. I think I tried to log into my Hinge, it'd be like blocked. But I didn't go onto a dating app after I came off the show. I'd actually been on one date with my current boyfriend before the show. And I came off the show and I thought, you know what, he's not the kind of person that would watch Love Island. I'm going to send him a message and say, hey, do you fancy going for another drink? Hoping that he was still single, and he was still single. He did realise that I'd been on Love Island, but only because of my Instagram. But yeah, we went on a few more dates and pretty soon got together. So I was very lucky that he was still single, because we've now been together for over a year.
And did he watch the show when you were on it, or?
No, he didn't. He just had his friends like messing with him, like sending him messages saying that I was up to no good, but actually, like, yeah, it was all fine.
Is he under strict instruction now never to go back and watch that series that you were on as well?
I mean, I don't think he could. He hates me talking. Like, I don't really talk about it very much, but if I do talk about it, he just sort of like recoils and hates it, which is totally understandable.
And so does that mean if you live together or not, that do you watch Love Island still? Are you kind of have you never watched it again? Do you still watch it?
No, I don't watch it. I think maybe I would if they had a bit more appropriate diversity. I've really struggled. I saw the lineup this year and I really struggled with the idea that there wasn't an Asian person in the lineup, considering how much of the UK population is Asian. It's the second highest ethnicity after Caucasian. And so we need to be represented more. And it was quite hurtful seeing that. Again, I think that even in the series before, it was the same case. And so I just don't think the show's for me. Yeah, obviously, having never watched the show before, I didn't really think too much about the diversity on the show. Having grown up in an area where there wasn't that much diversity, going to a school, like playing on sports teams where I was the only Asian person, was something that I was quite familiar with. And so going on to the show where I was the only Indian to be on the show at that time wasn't something that I was uncomfortable with. It was only coming off the show afterwards where I sort of saw the lineups year after year after year. I hadn't watched it, but I just sort of, you know, from a general picture, seeing the lineup, that's when it really hit me that there is diversity on the show. However, it's not appropriate. If you look at the UK population and you take into account the percentages of the different ethnicities in the UK, there are so many Asian people. And when you compare that to the number of Asian people on the show, it just doesn't add up. And so I don't know whether it's, you know, not enough Asian people applying for the show or whether that's like a casting decision, but I do think there needs to be a real push towards that.
Thank you. And what's next for you in terms of, I mean, you've talked about it before, but you want to pursue your medical career, carry on doing the things you love. You loved your life before. Do you love your life equally as much after the show?
Yes, I think I probably love my life more now. I'm very settled. I'm just about to finish medical school. I've got 2 more months until my final exams.
Good luck.
Exciting. Thank you. And you know, I'm very happy. I'm in a really good relationship. I've got really great friends, and you know, I'm so excited about all the opportunities that getting my my qualification will come with. Like, I can't wait to sort of be able to give out advice, and be really, because at the minute as a medical student, you can't really give out advice, because you're not qualified. However, as a doctor, I feel like you can help a lot more people through giving them like a medical opinion. And so I'm excited to be able to do that, and help people, and do a lot more running, and do some more ultras. That would be great too.